Yo, guys, what's up? How are we doing? I'm breaking back out the New York hat because today we're going to be talking a little bit about crypto, going over the charts, all that money business. We're here with Charkie from the Oakmont. And before we, dive into the charts and everything, Charkie, do you want to give a quick little background about who you are and what you do with the Oakmont?
Hey guys, yeah, so my name is Charlie, aka Charkie. I am basically a financial freedom seeker. My goal is to help people reach that state of financial freedom where they can, spend the time on a daily basis on what they want to do, kind of escape the 9 to 5. The primary way that we do that is through stock market investments, but obviously now with the rise of crypto and NFTs, we've also advanced into that, and so. The Oakmont is an NFT tokenized access private Discord group where we provide one-on-one mentoring and tutoring to individuals who are ready for that next step, and hopefully we can help some people out and finally break those chains.
Yo, I love it. I love it. So, today, starting off, Bitcoin, what you got for us?
So today I wanted just to kind of go through something very simple, not a class, but more of a discussion. What I want to show people is what a trader like myself goes through when determining where is a good opportunity to enter or to exit a trade. So for anybody wanting to trade crypto, because obviously with the pandemic and the demographic of the 18 to 35-year-old individuals, crypto is much more exciting than the stock market. So everybody must understand that Bitcoin leads the way. So always start with Bitcoin. And whenever you're doing analysis, always start with the 1 day chart. So just looking at it, you can tell that Bitcoin was struggling below 20,000 for a good 3-4 years until the pandemic hit and Bitcoin just kind of took off from there with all-time highs close to 70,000. So for anybody who has not gotten involved in Bitcoin, right? The first question is, well, is this a good time to buy or not? So let's walk through some of the scenarios on deciding on that. One of the first things that we do is that we want to plot out as far as technical analysis. Remember, guys, technical analysis is the study of the charts. It is not a study of the financials. Obviously, Bitcoin, doesn't create anything. It's not like Tesla, where they're generating cars, or Apple, where they're generating phones. It's merely a token that's traded, and its basis of growth is merely based on how many people buy and sell it. So the technical analysis is actually a little bit easier to identify than with the stocks. So as far as technical analysis goes, one of the very first things you need to do is set up what we call resistance and support lines. So looking at the chart here, I do have a 1 day chart. So every one of these little candlesticks, let me actually turn off this indicator. There you go. Every one of these little candlesticks is 1 day. So obviously this is a span of a little bit over a year. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get a horizontal line and just mark off the most recent highs and lows for Bitcoin. So obviously we had the high back in November, somewhere around 70,000. So we'll mark that. We had a recent low here in January with 32,000, another low here in June of 2021, and then another recent high. So you can definitely see that there's a strong support. And when we say support, we basically mean the bottom here for Bitcoin, right? This is the floor. And then we obviously have a very tough resistance or ceiling up here for Bitcoin. So it's been trading essentially in this, what we call range, for a little bit over a year and a half now. So if you're thinking about entering or exiting position, normally I would recommend waiting until it breaks above the resistance, or to exit below the support. Okay. But obviously we don't want to wait that long to get invested, right? When is it going to break above 70,000? Who knows? Maybe next year. When will it break below 32,000? Who knows? Maybe in 6 months. But that's how we start the general technical analysis. Now, for me, I've always enjoyed looking at patterns and looking at numbers as a sign of things to come. As I've told you before, I studied music in college, so I'm very well trained in identifying patterns. And from our discussions before about Elliott Wave, we remember that bullish moves or moves to the upside generally move in impulsive waves, right? Straight up. And corrective move in triangles or flags, right, to the downside, somewhere in there. it'll bounce around, and then it'll bounce around like that. So if you look at Bitcoin, we had an impulsive move upward, and then we corrected, impulsive move upward, and then we corrected. And obviously the most recent one was this giant impulsive move to the upside, right?
And that's really impulsive.
Yeah, definitely. And if you look at it and you remember what we talked about the first time, right? When we talked about impulsive waves, our third wave is generally our biggest wave. So if we look at this 5-wave sequence, doesn't that kind of look like that? Where this is our 1 here, and then up here this would be our 3. Sorry, my computer's a little slow, but you get the idea. This was the first impulsive move. We corrected for about 2 years, and then we had another impulsive move, and now we're correcting for probably the similar amount of time. If you don't know anything about technical analysis, I would like to say it's safe to say that if you were to enter a position today, a year from now, or 2 years from now, you're probably going to make money. I don't believe that Bitcoin will fall below 20,000. I have been hearing a lot of rumors about it dipping down to 32,000. I could see that, and we'll walk through why I would say that right now. But this is kind of what we would start with looking at. Again, this is a daily chart. So as you're making your plans, if you're planning on trading long term, and when we say long term, we say at least a year, 3 to 5 years or longer. Definitely a buy situation right now. Can you get better prices later? Absolutely. But over time, if you just continue to add and add and add, the likelihood of you being successful, I think, is more likely than not.
So one thing that I've kind of learned from NFTs and crypto as a whole over kind of, being in the space for the past year is I was of the mindset that, oh my God, once it reaches a certain level, like, there's no buying back into it. And for, I think, certain NFTs, that's legitimately the case. But in the same breath, there is usually a pretty hefty pullback. So when you have people that are throwing out these, calls, Bitcoin's going to 500K, it's going to 1 million. Do you actually see it going to those levels and not also simultaneously retracing pretty hard? Or is there legitimately a time where, we could hit those kind of levels and it actually stay, relatively there and not really ever have a dip?
Well, with Bitcoin, there's obviously two things you have to consider. First being the supply size. As you know, we're running out of Bitcoin. It's not going to end anytime soon. I think 2,150 or 2,350 is like when it's going to end in terms of supply. There's a halvening that's going to happen coming up in 2024. So there's other factors that determine the price. But as far as technical analysis, there are ways to be able to, I guess, sort of predict what milestones they could reach in terms of target goals. And that's where we use things like the Fibonacci extensions and retracements. Right? We talked about this in the previous video, where we measure the bottom of a move to the top of the move into the bottom of where it extends. And we look at the percentages as far as where it could go to. Right. So from this first wave up of 2017, right, this was the first bullish wave for Bitcoin into this most recent one. It's extending over the 2618. So our next target would be the 4236 at 85,000. But we would have to break out of this cycle first. But I would assume, barring something catastrophic, that Bitcoin would just continue to rise in value due to the fact that it's being more popularized, it's being utilized in a better sense. And that's why I like pairing Bitcoin with ETH. I'm actually more bullish on ETH than I am on Bitcoin because of its use for NFTs. I don't think that NFTs are dead. I don't think that NFTs are done. They're obviously going through what I call a second wave correction. But the higher that prices push on NFTs, obviously the higher that the Ethereum prices are going to push upward. So looking at Bitcoin on a much closer basis, there is something that I did announce to my group members today that I'm a little cautious of. And it's, remember we talked about these impulsive and corrective waves, right? These flags. They actually work the same way going to the downside. So if you have a move down and then you have a correction in this form, that's known as a bear flag. it's flagging to the upside. And that's what's happening right now with Bitcoin, right? We had this impulsive drop to the downside, and now we're correcting upward, but we're correcting in what's called a rising wedge. And this is actually a very bearish a signal that it would have to break through. And I do want to spend a little bit of a time kind of explaining why that's so. If you look at the prices of the highs, you notice that the highs are only increasing so much, maybe a couple $100 upwards, but the lows are increasing even higher as we go up. So what this shows us is that the bears are having a much more ground as far as the price level than the bulls are. Every time that the bulls are buying back, they're buying back closer to the top because they don't want it to dip lower than there, while the bears are stopping the price at this level. So since we're in a downtrend and we're refusing to break above this $48,000, $47,000 level, this is actually a bearish flag, which means in a normal basis, the flagpole, once it breaks down, will extend as far as this one here. So we get our extension to the downside. We measure from the top move to the down. Let's say that 48,000 is our level, and we don't break above 48,000. We could see lows as 12,000. Now that's scary, right? That you're talking about a 75% drop in Bitcoin. But that is what we're facing right now if we don't break above or remain above this 32,000 level. And again, I say that just with caution for people so that they know this is what may happen, but doesn't necessarily mean it will happen. A little scary, right?
It's cool to see about the wedge thing because I've heard that talked about before.
Yeah. So I think and it's one of the most reliable patterns. One of the things about triangles, and I do have to make sure people understand this, triangles can break up or down, right? You can see that this is starting to develop into a triangle here. So it can break to the upside, right? It can do one of these and break up, but it could also break to the downside. And that's why we have to be careful. Now, if it was a flag, if it was more parallel like this, I'd say that it's more likely to break to the upside. But since it's a wedge, right, the price is getting tighter and tighter, it's more likely that the buyers are getting exhausted. They're tired of having to bail out Bitcoin, coming in and buying more and more. And it does feel like it wants more to the downside. Now, short term, I do think that there's more upside. So if you look at the price resistance right now, we're at the same point of this dotted blue line. So it's very likely that we'll bounce from here up to around 47,000. That's going to be the kind of the golden spot to figure out whether we're going to break upward or downward. If we break above this wedge with some volume, then I think we're safe. But if we show a lot of weakness, like some of these candles here with these little wicks, then we break to the downside. And remember, stocks and crypto move slower to the upside and faster to the downside. Stairs up and escalator down.
So a lot of people say that Bitcoin leads the market in terms of whatever it does, everyone else follows. So I guess my question is, like, within the stock market, is there anybody that has that pattern similarly, or what do we need to know about the fact that Bitcoin kind of leads the market for all these other altcoins?
Right. So Bitcoin does lead the market by far more than anything else. Ethereum obviously is second, and then everybody else is kind of together. SPY is the correlation to the crypto market the way that Bitcoin is. So today we actually had a nice bounce from the current correction that SPY had, breaking up to the upside. So we retested this level here at 444, and we got a nice big green candle, which I think is going to continue tomorrow. However, we still have not broken out of it. We do still have some indicators that are hinting at overexhaustion. So we may be just bouncing, or what people like to call a dead cat bounce. I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that the stock market is back until we're back above 459, 460. So again, we can put a nice little a rectangle here. It's kind of like a measure. Anything above this, we're okay to go back up. But until we break that, I'm not sure if that's going to go back upward. I would like to say it would, but it may stop there and then become exhausted and come back down. And that's, Bitcoin and SPY, they don't correlate, they don't run together. But if the stock market is going down, there's a good chance that probably crypto is going to go down as well.
It's interesting seeing kind of the correlation in that aspect because for some of the stuff I'm seeing also is talks about like real estate and there's supposed to be like a huge crash for that, but at the same time like there's still housing that's going like way over asking prices and everything, and people are looking for different things to get into, whether it's crypto, stocks, real estate, yada yada.
Yeah, people always try to predict when the bubble is going to burst, but you have to remember the bubble can continue to grow until it pops. So for now, we continue to play it until we find confirmation that yes, indeed, we're done. So to look for that, we've got to go to a longer time frame. So we go to a monthly chart and we look at the indicators, and the indicators are actually showing us that there's a little bit of a room to the upside. But see, it's not entirely clear. So down here, these are some of my favorite indicators that I use. MACD is probably the second most popular one, which is a moving average channel divergence. What you're looking for here is for the red line to cross over the blue line for the stock to go down, and then the inverse for the blue line to go over the red to go up. So you see here that there's like a curve happening. There's a changeover. So that's hinting at a little bit more downside coming. However, the other two indicators, Stock RSI being one of them, is showing that we're oversold, right? If you look at Stock RSI, the last time on the monthly chart that we were at these levels, let me grab my pen here. This is the last time we were here. This was in the COVID crash of March of 2020. We're at that same level now. So look at what we did after this bounce. How are we gonna dump more if we're already overexhausted? So that's the question right now. Is we might trade sideways for a little bit, but the more likely scenario is that we break more to the upside. So I don't think that there's a flash crash coming. I don't think that there's something desperate coming. Is there a correction going on? Yeah, by all means, but not to the point where you're going to want to go and sell everything and panic. But definitely use a lot more caution. So we were talking about Bitcoin, right? So obviously the next thing we want to look at, well, let me go back to Bitcoin to finish up that thought. So here's what I would be looking at right now. If you're investing strictly in Bitcoin, is right now a good place to buy? I would say yes, but I would set a limit, a stop loss somewhere around 41.5, maybe around there. Once it breaks this wedge to the downside, that's where I would exit. I would continue to hold until it gets up here, maybe around 48,000. So there's a risk to reward here. Do I have this here? No, I won't show it. But anyway, there's a risk to reward here of around 2 to 1, 3 to 1 here. Let me get this. So this area here could be our risk, and then all the way up here is our potential profit to the upside. So short term, that's what I would look at for anybody who's looking to get into things. So from there, now we say, okay, chart looks a little bit bearish. We need a few things to happen in order to continue this uptrend, but it's not showing the best amount. The volume really isn't there either. If you look at the wicks down here, the wicks they're pretty low. So where's Ethereum, right? Where's ETH? Well, it's kind of doing the same thing, right? If we look here, it's kind of got the same pattern. And we had discussed this in a much earlier video, I think about a month ago, right? And we had identified this 5-wave sequence to the downside. 1 being here, 2 a big deep 3. Now we're correcting to this 4 over here. So 5 would be all the way back down here to 1600, 1700. You're talking about a 50% drop potentially. So Ethereum right now is showing us a much more bearish signal than Bitcoin is. But again, when would I feel comfortable exiting Ethereum? Somewhere around 2,700, breaking the levels of this wedge that we're building. So yeah, not the best place to enter, but at least with this analysis, you can see that there's places to be cautious of. Can you enter now? Sure. Is there better places or safer places to enter? Yes, absolutely.
I'm curious how the entire market kind of flushes out in a way because we're getting a lot more adoption overall, and I think with crypto, I think NFTs are taking it to another level. And so, I suppose my question is: do you think that we would have this kind of, I'll call it like a resurgence in crypto, or as much of a demand in it right now, if the whole wave of NFTs didn't happen over the past year?
But I think you're right on. I think that the crypto pump was definitely assisted and obviously led by NFTs, specifically ETH. If we look at the pricing of things like Bored Ape Yacht Club and CryptoPunks and so forth, their highs were in November and December, right? Same thing with last year when we saw Top Shot really take off in January and February. The peaks of these um, crypto coins are connected to that way. So this is why you're seeing a bounce right now. I had messaged you about what was the project? Little Pudgies, right? I had purchased one back in December for like 0.03 ETH, and all of a sudden now it's 0.17 ETH, and I had no idea why that was happening, right? But if you look at the price of Ethereum and then you look at what was happening with the token, it kind of made sense on why those things were happening. Now, one thing that I do caution when we're doing these analysis, when we're looking at things on the downside, is that there are measurements that you can actually pinpoint on certain moves. So for instance, when we go down and we come up and we go back down, right? This is the most common correction that we see. We have an A wave to the downside, we have a B wave to the upside, and then we have a final C wave to the downside. There's a few things that we have to notice about this pattern. A wave usually equals C wave, okay? So when we have this, the A can equal the C, all right? So as fast and as hard as this one fell, this one will fall just as fast and as hard. Now, it can stop. It can stop at the bottom of this wave, somewhere around there. That's possible, but typically it does extend to the downside. And the other rule, the other idea is that B is usually around 50% to 61.8% of A. So if we look at this dip that we had down here, right? And now we're correcting upward. And this is why I love using, this is why I love using Fibonacci so much, because like you asked me before, like, how do you know where it's going to go up to, or how deep is it going to retrace? So we know that this is the top here, right? 48,000. And we know that this was a significant support. So this in itself is one move right here, right? In here. This is one entire move from there to there. So we're going back upward. We're retracing in the opposite way. Instead of it going down, we're going upward because the trend is downward. So we take our Fibonacci retracement and we measure from the top all the way down to the bottom. And if you notice, a couple of days ago, it stopped right at the 50% mark, okay? So if that level holds and Ethereum does not break back up around 3,500, we will see, and I want to say will with a very emphatic tone, we will see 2,200 at least. But more likely, which I don't really want to see, even as I'm saying this, I'm kind of like, man, I don't want a bearish market, but I have to just listen to the charts, is an extension to the downside, which could lead Ethereum all the way back to 866. Now that is a super.
Sheesh. Oh my goodness.
That would be horrible, right? It would be a.
That would be. I mean, listen. I feel like the NFT market would fly. I mean, maybe if crypto crashes, people panic sell their NFTs. But I mean, I don't know. NFTs might go nuts if that the prices go down to there.
Yeah, I actually before we decided to meet, I wanted to sit down and think about this, but maybe we could do another session on whether. Well, I do think that the price of Ethereum impacts NFTs. But with it going down, I'm not sure it impacts it as much, because then Ethereum does become more affordable, and therefore you can actually buy more NFTs, because you would have to adjust the ETH prices, and most NFT people don't. They don't see that connection. So you can buy something for 40, 50% less than what it was actually worth. Same situation of what I saw with the Pudgy Penguins, right? In January, there were 75% less than what the price is now. So potentially that could happen. Again, this is not the scenario that I would like, but it is something that's possible.
It's yeah, that's some food for thought, I
Yeah.
suppose.
I know bearish talk is like the worst thing ever, but let's look at some positive. So I did mention 2 videos ago this correlation between AMC and ETC. So I wanted to give an update on that. ETC right now is actually flagging to the upside. It just broke down from this triangle, but let me take this one out. Let me go back to a shorter time frame. So in the short time frame, we just broke out of this triangle, moving upward to the upside. So I do see us kind of climbing back up into the $46, $47 range. One of the all-time favorite pattern indicators is the cup and handle, which looks like this: a big old cup, a little dip down, and then a rocket upward. So I do see that happening for ETC. So, a little bit of good news in the meantime. But if we do look at the daily chart, we do see a drop of that first triangle that it was building to the downside. And see, this is the thing, Vaughn. I want really people to understand this. Is you draw this triangle out here, right? Something like something like this, and you see when it breaks here, it doesn't just break and then bleed, right? It falls hard. That's a sign of confirmation of this move to the downside. And then we come back up, we retest where we just left, but more than likely we're going to head back downward. So yeah, I don't like this. I didn't like this because I was actually extremely bullish, a couple of weeks ago. But now looking at how things are forming, I do have to put some caution in the air for some of the bigger coins and crypto.
Noted. All right. Well, Charky, is there any kind of final things in terms of just takeaways, I suppose, from the conversation that we had today that people should be aware of, or just kind of remember from your pointers here?
Well, definitely, if you are interested in investing long-term into crypto, I do think that eventually you will make money, although you can find better prices. But don't stress too much about finding the bottom, okay? It's extremely difficult to do that. Take 90% instead of waiting for 100%. Take profits where they stand. And I would start looking at something right now already in terms of taking profits on things like Bitcoin and Ethereum if we cannot break with support of these levels. But anyway, if you guys are looking for more educational content, we are going to be making some special announcements within our Discord related to the metaverse. And hit me up for a one-on-one session, and we'll see you guys next week.
Hell yeah. So guys, again, if you're wanting to follow them here on socials, and you can find their Discord link and all that kind of jazz on their profile, it's at the Oakmont on Twitter. Charky, as always, thanks so much for providing your insight. And of course, we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Vaughn. Have a good weekend.